It's really coming down, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just heading in. You a fan?
I am. It's a good spot to wait out the rain.
Had just entered his ex-wife's lavish wedding venue with a woman nobody recognized. Her simple blue dress contrasted sharply with the designer outfits surrounding them, but it was her genuine smile that drew every eye in the room. What no one knew was that Elena had been living in a shelter just 3 days earlier, or that their unlikely partnership would change both their lives forever. If you've ever believed in second chances or the power of human connection, this is a story you won't want to miss. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Daniel stared at the cream-colored wedding invitation for the 5th time that week. After 3 years of separation and a relatively amicable divorce, his ex-wife Jessica was marrying her financial advisor, Cameron. The invitation allowed for a +1, a detail that had been gnawing at Daniel for weeks. At 42, he hadn't dated seriously since the divorce, focusing instead on raising their children, Emma, 15, and Max, 12, and keeping his small bookstore afloat. "Dad, you have to go," Emma insisted over breakfast, her teenage wisdom delivered between bites of toast. "Mom wants you there, and hiding at home is just going to make everything weird when you see them at our school stuff." "I know, sweetheart," Daniel sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "But showing up alone to your mom's wedding feels pathetic somehow." Max looked up from his cereal. "Take someone then. Doesn't have to be a girlfriend." Daniel chuckled. "Not exactly swimming in options here, buddy." But Max's suggestion lingered as Daniel walked to work that morning. His bookstore, Turning Pages, sat on a quiet street corner in Portland, a haven of worn wooden shelves and the comforting scent of old books. The April rain fell steadily, and Daniel was so preoccupied with his thoughts that he almost missed the woman huddled in the doorway of his shop. She was perhaps in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her clothes were clean but worn, and she had a backpack and a small rolling suitcase beside her. Most notably, she was reading a dog-eared copy of Jane Austen's Persuasion. "Sorry," Daniel said, fumbling for his keys. "I'm opening up now if you'd like to come in." The woman looked up, revealing intelligent brown eyes and a face that, despite obvious exhaustion, carried a quiet dignity. "I wasn't trying to loiter," she said, her voice unexpectedly cultured. "The overhang was keeping me dry. I'll move along." Something in her expression made Daniel pause. "No rush. Actually, we just got a new shipment of classics in yesterday if you're interested. First cup of coffee's on the house." That's how Elena Martinez first entered Daniel's life, seeking shelter from the rain but finding so much more. Over that first cup of coffee, Daniel learned she had been an English professor at a small college in California until a series of cascading tragedies, her mother's lengthy illness, mounting medical bills, and finally the loss of her teaching position during department cuts, had left her homeless. She'd come to Portland following the promise of a teaching job that had fallen through at the last minute. "I have applications out everywhere," she explained without self-pity. "Libraries, schools, bookstores. I've got 2 interviews next week. Just need to weather the storm until then." She smiled at her own pun as rain lashed against the windows. Daniel found himself offering her a temporary job shelving books and helping with inventory. His longtime assistant had just left for maternity leave, and the timing seemed providential. When he discovered Elena was staying at the women's shelter downtown, he hesitated only briefly before offering her the small apartment above his garage. His kids, surprisingly, were immediately on board. "She knows, like, everything about books, Dad," Emma reported after dinner the first night Elena joined them. "And she helped me understand that weird Shakespeare sonnet for English." Max was equally impressed. "She used to coach chess at her college. She said she'd teach me some strategies." Over the next few weeks, a comfortable rhythm developed. Elena proved invaluable at the bookstore, reorganizing sections and suggesting community events that brought in new customers. At home, She kept to herself but gradually became part of their evening routines, helping with homework, joining board game nights, contributing delicious Mexican dishes to their meals. Daniel found himself sharing conversations that stretched late into the night, discussing books and films and life. The wedding loomed closer. During a rare quiet moment at the bookstore, Daniel impulsively asked, "Would you consider coming to my ex's wedding with me?" As friends, he hastily added. "It's just. I don't want to go alone, and you're easy to talk to, Anne." "Yes," Elena interrupted with a small smile. "Though I have nothing appropriate to wear to a wedding." That weekend found them at a vintage clothing store, where Elena discovered a simple but elegant blue dress that seemed made for her. Daniel pretended not to notice how it brought out the warm undertones in her skin or how she seemed to stand taller when she saw herself in the mirror. The day of the wedding arrived with perfect May sunshine. Daniel's children would be attending with their mother and had left the previous day after extracting promises that Daniel would behave and take plenty of pictures of Elena, all dressed up. Daniel was adjusting his tie when Elena knocked on his bedroom door. The transformation was subtle but striking. She wore the blue dress with borrowed silver earrings from Emma, and her dark hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. But it was her expression, nervous yet determined, that caught Daniel's attention. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Elena smoothed her dress. "Thank you for this. All of this. I know it might seem strange to thank someone for taking you to their ex's wedding, but the past month has been a gift I never expected." The ceremony was held at an upscale vineyard outside the city. As they drove through the gates, Daniel felt a familiar tightness in his chest. "Jessica always wanted to get married at a place like this," he murmured. "We could never afford it when we were young." Elena touched his arm lightly. "You don't have to explain anything to me. We all have our histories." The outdoor ceremony space was picture-perfect. Rows of white chairs facing an arch covered with spring flowers, vineyards rolling into the distance. Daniel steered them toward seats in the back, but a woman he recognized as Jessica's sister intercepted them. "Daniel. Mom and Dad have been looking for you. They saved seats up front with the family." She glanced curiously at Elena. "This is my friend, Elena Martinez," Daniel said. "Elena, this is Christine, Jessica's sister." Christine's eyebrows rose slightly, but she smiled. "Any friend of Daniel's is welcome. Come on, the ceremony's about to start." Suddenly Daniel found himself seated in the second row, painfully aware of the curious glances and whispered comments. Elena, however, maintained her composure, smiling politely and engaging in small talk with Jessica's elderly aunt beside her. The ceremony was lovely and mercifully brief. Jessica looked radiant in an elegant gown, and even Daniel had to admit that Cameron's vows seemed heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Daniel felt a strange mixture of emotions, a twinge of loss for what might have been, but predominantly relief and genuine well-wishes for the mother of his children. The reception was held in a converted barn strung with twinkling lights. Daniel and Elena found themselves at a table with distant cousins and Jessica's work colleagues. The initial awkwardness was dispelled when Elena deftly guided the conversation toward neutral topics, recent films, travel destinations, books that had been made into movies. "You're quite the conversationalist," Daniel whispered as the main course was served. Elena smiled. "When you've taught undergraduate survey courses, you learn to make small talk with anyone." The moment that changed everything came after dinner. The band started playing, and Cameron's elderly grandmother, using a walker and accompanied by a nurse, approached their table. She spoke loudly, as many hard-of-hearing people do. "You're Daniel's new lady friend? The teacher who fell on hard times?" Elena glanced at Daniel in confusion. He hadn't told anyone her story. The grandmother continued, "My grandson told me all about you. Said Daniel was bringing someone special who'd been through a rough patch. I wanted to meet you myself." As Elena graciously engaged with the grandmother, Daniel noticed Jessica watching from across the room. She approached their table slowly. "Daniel, could I borrow you for a moment?" Her tone was pleasant but firm. Outside on the terrace, Jessica didn't waste time. "Is it true? You brought a homeless woman to my wedding?" Daniel bristled. "Elena is a highly educated former professor who's temporarily experiencing housing insecurity. And she's currently my employee and friend." Jessica's expression softened unexpectedly. "Relax, Daniel. I'm not attacking you." Cameron overheard Emma telling one of her cousins about the awesome lady staying above your garage who knows everything about books and used to be homeless. Daniel sighed. "It's complicated." "It always is with you," Jessica said, but without malice. "You and your strays. Remember that three-legged cat you insisted we adopt? Or the exchange student who ended up staying an extra semester?" "Elena isn't a stray," Daniel said firmly. Jessica studied him for a moment. "No, I don't think she is." After a pause, she added, "She seems lovely, Daniel. And it's nice to see you engaged again. You've been going through the motions for so long." When Daniel returned to the reception, he couldn't immediately locate Elena. He finally spotted her on the dance floor with Cameron's grandmother, who had abandoned her walker to sway gently in Elena's supportive arms. Other guests were watching and smiling, some taking photos. The band was playing "What a Wonderful World," and Elena was singing along softly to the elderly woman, who beamed with delight. Something shifted in Daniel's chest as he watched, a loosening of a knot he hadn't realized was there. When the song ended and everyone applauded, Elena helped the grandmother back to her walker with such natural grace and kindness that several people wiped away tears. Cameron approached Elena immediately, thanking her profusely. "My grandmother hasn't danced since my grandfather died." That was incredible. Word spread quickly through the reception. Suddenly Elena was no longer Daniel's mysterious date, but a person of interest in her own right. People approached her throughout the evening, to compliment her dancing, to ask about her teaching background after someone mentioned she'd been a professor, to discuss books when they learned she worked at Daniel's store. Daniel watched with growing admiration as Elena navigated each conversation with genuine interest and warmth. There was no self-consciousness about her circumstances, no apology for who she was. When Jessica's father, a retired English teacher, engaged her in a spirited debate about Jane Austen versus the Brontes, a small crowd gathered to listen. Later, as they slow danced, Daniel said, "You've completely charmed everyone here." Elena laughed softly. "Hardly. I'm just being myself." "That's exactly what I mean," Daniel replied. "You've had every reason to be bitter or withdrawn considering what you've been through, but instead, you're the most genuinely present person I've ever met." As the evening wound down, Jessica's mother sought them out. "Elena, dear, my husband mentioned you're looking for teaching opportunities. I'm on the board at Portland Community College. We have a literacy program that needs leadership. Would you be interested in discussing it?" Daniel watched Elena's composed expression falter slightly as hope flickered in her eyes. "I would be very interested, yes. Thank you." On the drive home, Elena was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she said, "I never expected any of this when I sheltered in your doorway that rainy morning." Daniel glanced at her. "Regrets?" "No," she said firmly. "Gratitude. And maybe a little fear." "Of what?" "Of hoping too much." Her voice was soft. "I've learned the hard way how quickly everything can disappear." Daniel reached across the console and took her hand. "Some things disappear. Others appear just when you need them most." The weeks following the wedding brought swift changes. Elena interviewed for and was offered the position with the college's literacy program. She found an affordable apartment near campus but hesitated to move immediately. "The kids will miss you," Daniel said when she broached the subject, not quite admitting he would miss her most of all. "I'll miss them too," Elena replied. "All of you." But I need to stand on my own again. The day Elena moved into her new apartment, Emma insisted on decorating with plants and photos. Max set up her chessboard. Daniel brought books, of course, a first edition of Persuasion he'd tracked down through a dealer friend. That evening, after the kids had gone home with Daniel, he returned alone with dinner. They sat on her bare floor eating takeout Thai food, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. "I have a business proposition," Daniel said eventually. "The bookstore's community events have been so successful that I'm thinking of expanding the program. We could use someone with academic connections and event planning experience. Part-time, to supplement your teaching." Elena set down her fork. "Are you offering me a job because you think I need help?" "I'm offering because I need help," Daniel corrected. "And because when you're in the bookstore, everything works better. Including me." Their eyes met, and the unspoken hung between them, how in just 2 months, she had become essential. "I should disclose something first," Elena said carefully. "I've developed feelings that might complicate a professional relationship." Daniel's heart stuttered. "What kind of feelings?" "The kind that make me want to kiss my potential employer, which is terribly inappropriate." Daniel set his food aside. "I should disclose something too. I haven't stopped thinking about you since you danced with Cameron's grandmother. Possibly since you were reading Austen in my doorway." Their first kiss tasted of green curry and possibility. 6 months later, Daniel found himself holding another cream-colored envelope, this time containing an invitation to a literacy program fundraiser organized by Elena, now the full-fledged director. His children teased him mercilessly about his obvious crush as he fretted over what to wear. The fundraiser was held at the college's renovated theater. Daniel arrived early, watching proudly as Elena commanded the room in a new red dress, introducing formerly illiterate adults who shared moving stories about how learning to read had transformed their lives. When Elena spotted him, her entire face lit up. She navigated through the crowd directly to him, no longer the woman seeking shelter but a force of nature who had found her purpose again. "You came," she said, as if there were any doubt. "I wouldn't miss it," Daniel replied. "Though I did come with an ulterior motive." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Oh? I was hoping to convince the brilliant director to consider a more permanent arrangement with a certain bookstore owner." Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "And perhaps his children, who have drafted a very persuasive presentation on why you should officially become their stepmother." Elena's eyes widened. Around them, the fundraiser continued, but in that moment, they existed in a world of their own making, one built from chance encounters, second chances, and the courage to begin again. "Sometimes," Elena said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "the universe puts exactly the right person in your path at exactly the right moment. Even if that path is just a bookstore doorway in the rain," Daniel added. When she said yes, the room erupted in applause. Jessica's father was there as a program volunteer, and he'd alerted the crowd to what was happening. As congratulations poured in, Daniel marveled at how thoroughly Elena had once again stolen the show, this time not at a wedding but at her own professional triumph. Later that night, as they walked hand in hand under the stars, Elena said, "You know what I think about sometimes? How many invisible threads had to align for us to meet. If I hadn't lost my job, if your assistant hadn't gone on maternity leave, if it hadn't rained that morning. If Emma hadn't insisted I go to Jessica's wedding," Daniel added. "If you hadn't been brave enough to show up." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. "Maybe that's the real story here. Not just about second chances, but about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're afraid of what might happen." "Especially then," Elena agreed. 1 year later, they held their own wedding in the bookstore. The shelves were adorned with twinkling lights, and chairs were arranged between stacks of classics and contemporary fiction. Jessica and Cameron attended with their new baby. Emma served as Elena's maid of honor, while Max proudly carried the rings. Cameron's grandmother, now using a wheelchair but still spirited, insisted on having the first dance with the bride.